for being here today. I want to thank the Rabbi for speaking to the Almighty and providing this weather. I'm David Popowski, member of Tikvah, and proud to have been the chair of the Holocaust Memorial in Marion Square. My parents are survivors, came here in 1949. Many of you knew them. Many of my who I see here also knew them. So this is a touching moment for me. We're going to have a very concise 30-minute program because we have people who have other commitments for sure, but this is on their agenda right at the top of it. I will only say as a general matter that there are less than 50,000 survivors, Holocaust survivors in the United States now. And therefore, the evidence of the Holocaust is all important. From this cattle car, I have with me a shoe shine brush my mother picked up on her way in Warsaw at an apartment after she was liberated, when she and my aunt were liberated. So all of the evidence and artifacts of the Holocaust are all important because the people who can speak to the Holocaust as eyewitnesses, unfortunately, have gone on those. So with that, I would like to tell you generally what our program will be. Our program will be remarks by Senator Tim Scott, Mayor Tecklenburg, and then Rabbi Nimram will wrap it up. Let me first say about Senator Scott and Mayor Tecklenburg that their devotion and relationships in the Jewish community in South Carolina and Charleston are wide and deep. And I want to thank them in particular for taking the time to be here. I'm not surprised that they are. First, turning to Senator Scott, I'll only mention this about him because most of you already know him very well. He began his insurance career in private life. He was in the insurance industry. And that began, one of his early jobs was at Treasted Schulk, venerable name in the Charleston area. And he worked for the Freudenberg family. And there he came to know our beloved survivor, Margot Freudenberg. Many of you knew her, both as a congregant at the temple, as a friend, and as a physical therapist. She was a woman very much ahead of her time at the time she was in Charleston, but she brought her son, along with her husband, her son Henry, who Senator Scott worked for, and he's going to explain it a little bit more, to Charleston. They got out when Hitler came to power in Germany in the early 30s, so they didn't suffer through some of the horrors that people who couldn't get out did. But Senator Scott knows the family and knew her very well. So with that, I present to you Senator Scott.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, Rabbi Nimram. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the invitation to be a part of what should be something we should never forget. The truth is that it is our responsibility to make sure that we fight every single day to extinguish hate wherever it is. To think in that cattle car, you could have 100 human beings being transported to concentration camps. To understand and to realize the depravity of man, hatred could so consume someone is unbelievable. But to deny the existence of that depth of hate would be not in our best interest. And I'll tell you that as a young man growing up in business, to have the good fortune of being in a speaking organization where I would meet Larry Freudenberg and have an opportunity to go back and forth over speeches and to learn about how to make a positive presentation as a youngster at 23 years old, just about 10 or 12 years ago. It ain't that funny. But anyway, so I literally took this journey with Larry Freudenberg and then became a part of the then Treast and Shoke Agency. And then meeting Henry and then finally Mrs. Freudenberg to understand the journey on a daily basis, to sit at a lunch table and have conversations about the Jewish experience and then comparing it with the African American experience and to see so many similarities. One of the reasons why I'm the founding member of the Black Jewish Caucus in the United States Senate is because of the experiences that I had 30 plus years ago. And bringing people together who have gone through tragedy, challenges, but have risen to the occasion, and now we live in a place of triumph, is a necessary component. One of the reasons why I believe that the best is yet to come for this nation is because we continue to stand together against hate. When I sponsored the legislation of eliminating anti-Semitism on college campuses, and then the president made it into an executive order, being there when we are pushing back with every fiber of our being is our responsibility, but it is a blessing to have an opportunity to live in such a country where we fight for freedom, but we do it together. God bless you, and thank you for allowing me to be here on such an incredibly special day.
Before we turn to Mayor Tecklenburg, I want to recognize who are behind me: Council Member Keith Waring, Council Member Peter Shade, and a council member who grew up around here, literally on this property, Ross Appel. Mike Seekins, where are you? My friend Mike Seekins. There we go. Mayor Tecklenburg certainly doesn't need an introduction, but I always can't resist when I do that in front of a Jewish audience that I point out that I received a call when he was the director of Uptown Development, when he was working for the city before he was mayor. And he called me and he said, "I want to put a menorah in Marion Square." Nobody asked him. I didn't ask him. He called me to tell me and to ask me certain questions about it. And I think that speaks to the heart of Mayor Tecklenburg. And if you knew his family like I do and did, and knew his parents so well, and there are people here who knew Henry and Esther Tecklenburg, you're not surprised. Not surprised at all. So with that, I'd like to present our mayor, John Tecklenburg.
Thank you, David. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. One thing you learn about an engagement like this is try not to speak after Senator Scott. So I've already kind of off to a good, rough start here. I was going to recognize my council members. They've just been recognized. We almost have a quorum here. We could pass some business. I have a proclamation on behalf of myself and City Council. Hate ends now. Hate ends now. In fact, the proclamation that I'll read in a few minutes proclaims that today is Hate Ends Now Day in the city of Charleston. If only it was so easy. If only we could just say so, make a proclamation and make hate go away. I don't know what it is about human nature, this struggle between good and evil, outlined to us from the verses of Genesis, and we've seen it throughout human history. There's something about the power of evil, the dark side, as outlined in one of my favorite film series, Star Wars. Darth Vader says, "You don't know the power of the dark side." It's maybe a crazy story series of films, but at the end of the day, it's just a retelling of that challenge of good and evil in the world. Why are we here today with this cattle car behind me on tour? It's to remind people of the greatest evil in human history, and that was the Holocaust. It's to remind us of that. But I view it as a challenge in addition to that reminder of history, so that we can do better in the future, to instill in the hearts of all of us, the hearts of everyone that we touch here, the need in this world for compassion, for respect for one another, and for love. Can one heart make a difference? Ask Dylan Roof when he came to Charleston to start a race war. Ask Vladimir Putin if one heart can make a difference. I know he's engaged in an evil and illegal war. I pray to God every day that God will touch Putin's heart. And the ultimate irony, the great tragedy that we see in the world today in Ukraine, where 2.6 million Jews were murdered during World War II. That was over 96% of the Jewish population of Ukraine was murdered during the Holocaust. Almost half of the 6 million Jews were in fact in Ukraine. So we see before our eyes today on the world stage what Putin has unleashed, the indiscriminate bombing of cities, of civilians, of hospitals, of schools. And it's not the Russian people. They have been misled by an evil dictator. So what can we do? We remember and never forget. And this cattle car helps us with those memories. We stand up. We stand up to hate and discrimination and violence of all kinds. Anti-Semitism, racism. So why in the state of South Carolina, under the leadership of Representative Wendell Gilliard and Beth Bernstein, why can we not pass a hate crime bill in South Carolina? I can't figure it out. What are they so afraid of? What are they so afraid of that we can't pass a hate crime law? We passed one in the city of Charleston, my colleagues here on city council, but the way our system works, that just applies to the more misdemeanor charges that are handled on a city level. So for larger crimes, we need this hate crime bill in the state of South Carolina. I ask you all to support it and make it happen this year. And then there's the everyday things that we can do, as I mentioned, to instill compassion and respect and love in one another. Maybe it's mentoring kids, someone who hasn't had the opportunity of a home life where those values were taught. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank Rabbi Minson and Congregation Dor Tikvah for having the cattle car here. It's an honor to help you open the exhibit. It's an honor for all of us to serve. I view it as not just an honor, but a duty and a responsibility and a challenge for all of us to fight hate and to promote human understanding and compassion. Whereas the Holocaust existed as a state-sponsored means of systematic annihilation of the Jewish people, resulting in the murder of over 6 million Jews and millions of other targeted individuals, as well as the displacement, kidnapping, and persecution of millions more. And whereas the events of the Holocaust compel us to reflect on and prevent further instances of intolerance and hate in our community and worldwide. And whereas Hate Ends Now's cattle car exhibit offers an opportunity for citywide education through the testimony of Holocaust survivors, whereas experiencing the testimony becomes increasingly important as time distances us from the living connections to the history of the Holocaust. And whereas I encourage all citizens to remember the victims of the Holocaust and to firmly commit themselves to promote human dignity by confronting intolerance and hate whenever and wherever it occurs. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, along with my City Council members here present, do hereby proclaim today, Sunday, March 27, it is Hate Ends Now Day in the City of Charleston, y'all. Thank you so much. Rabbi.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I turn it over to Rabbi Mimran to close, I want to recognize Jordana Leibowitz of Toronto, Canada, who gave birth to this idea and is responsible for traveling throughout the United States. Where are you, Jordana? Raise your hand. Right there. There she is. Thank you very much. But yeah. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rabbi Mimran.
Thank you. Those of you that are able to and are up for it, please rise and I begin with a brief prayer for those who perished in the Holocaust. We'll say it in Hebrew and translate it briefly. Only if you're up for it. El Mali Rachim Sheikhim Amroim Hamtzi Menuch Nachin Al Kanfi Ashchina B'Malas Kedoshim V'Tahirim Kazoyha Rakia Masirim Es Nishmais Sheishes Million Akdoshim Anoshim Noshim V'Tav Kehilas HaKodesh Shemosru Nafshom Al Kedushas Hashem V'Nehem Tinokesh Shal Yisrabim Sheitom Utam Chet Hanoumim V'Anaimim V'Chayim V'Moisam Lo Nifradu V'Ganeden Teim Nechasam Lachim Balarachmim Yastirim B'Sefer Knafav Leilamim V'Yisra B'Torachim Es Nishmaisem Hashem Unachalasam V'Nuch B'Shalom Al Mishkreisem V'Noimar Amen.
Amen.
God, full of mercy, who dwells in the heights, shelter the souls of the innocent 6 million men, women, and children, holy communities who were slaughtered by the Holocaust, strangled, suffocated, and burnt to ash. Amongst them, young children who never tasted sin. In their life and their death, they weren't separated. Their holy souls passed into your care. Let the Garden of Eden be their resting place. Master of mercy, drape them and keep them forever in your protecting presence, and bind their souls to the living and the life. God, you are their inheritance, and where they rest, ease them with peace, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
You can sit down now. Very briefly, I just want to thank everybody who made this possible. NCSY, who brought this exhibit here to the south. Thank you to Todd Cohn, who came from all the way from Florida, Rabbi Loeb and his group from Savannah. Thank you to the Charleston Jewish Federation, some of whom we have with us from the amazing team who brought it here to Charleston. And thanks to our amazing programming committee who made this a reality. And of course, we are grateful to the dignitaries and officials, Senator Scott, Mayor Tecklenburg, council members, great friends of our community for joining us here today. And I invite them and everybody to tour the cattle car. But first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the 2 Holocaust survivors that we have with us here today. There was one that wasn't able to make it, Deanie Atkins. Deanie has nightmares until this day of a cattle car just like this one, which the Nazis used between 1941 and 1944 to transport the people to the camps. We have with us Joe Engel. Joe was a 14-year-old boy. He was one of the last to be let out of the Warsaw ghetto to the railway station and loaded onto a cattle car taken to Auschwitz. He never saw his parents again. He spent 2.5 days crammed inside one of these with no food, with no water. He watched people die inside this. You will hear from Joe perhaps later on. Hetty Baum. Hetty is one of the... Hetty has made it her life mission. She travels with this cattle car. She was just 15 years old when she spent 3 days and 3 nights inside a cattle car like this. And after the door of the cattle car finally opened, her father was taken to the right without even a chance for her to say goodbye. And her mother was told to start marching. Hetty ran after her, but she was stopped by a Nazi rifle. She never saw her father or her mother again. You can hear more on her story inside, and hopefully we'll hear from her also shortly. And as we take turns, I'll finish with this, as we take turns experiencing this powerful exhibit, I want you all to think about the following thing. There was a 13-year-old girl named Fritzie Wise. She was also one of the millions who were taken to the extermination camps in these. She later survived the war, and she told over about how they were all crammed in, 80, 90, 100, sometimes up to 150 people. Men, women, and children crammed into a tiny cattle car just like this. And this was just one part of a 15 cattle car train with 4 walls, no restrooms, just 2 buckets were given to them on either side, no seats, very limited ventilation, and the stench was unbearable. She relates how at that point they had no idea where they were going. The Nazis hadn't told them where they were going. They told them they were going for work, to be relocated, resettled. And she finished and she said the moment that the door closed and they heard it get bolted from the outside, that was the moment where they all knew that where they were being taken to was not freedom. It is our duty to ensure that the Holocaust in its entirety will always be remembered. May the memory of those that perished be a blessing for all of us. I would like to now invite the officials, dignitaries, council members, senator, mayor, to please enter and experience the exhibit. And lastly, keep in mind this will be open today until 4 p.m. The amazing team here will run the presentation every half hour, on a half hour, to come around the half hour, the hour mark. And thank you so much everyone for coming. There's water at the back for anyone that needs. And let us keep the memory of this alive. Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.